Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sidelines podcast. And Raiders fans, you can put away your pitchforks for this episode. We will not be talking about current events. Instead, we have a very fun show planned. What we're going to do is we're going to sort of do a deep dive about Super Bowl 49, talk about Super Bowl 49, all the crazy stuff that happened. And I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking, okay, classic Kyle, he chose a Patriots Super Bowl win to talk about. But no, it was my idea, and I picked this one because it is my favorite Super Bowl. We'll get all into it in a second. But first, Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I am now deemed as a Raiders hater, which is what I heard. So it's been an interesting development, but overall doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Yeah, it might just be partly because I'm just like, I think most people would sound like a Raiders hater compared to me. But regardless, again, the conversation for another podcast for sure. Yes, just a little bit of housekeeping. Everyone, make sure that if you want to just listen to the audio only file, you can click the link in the description to the website. The podcasts are up on there, so you can click that. And yeah, so basically, I think should be a really fun episode. We're going to just go over everything that went on during Super Bowl 49. And I think that really what I want to get into first is just what happened even before this game, because I think this is probably the only time that the Patriots, that it was kind of up in the air who to root for in a Patriots Super Bowl. Because the first Super Bowl, Patriots were kind of like the underdogs in a sense. They were like the lovable team, and then pretty much every other Super Bowl they had been very hated. But this Super Bowl, the Seahawks were basically just as hated as they were. So I found that a very interesting dynamic just heading into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I remember going back and watching this, how annoying I felt the Seahawks were. Like Wagner made the one pick, and then Baldwin went and finally got a touchdown. It was like one of his only catches of the game. And they're just like, Sherman's over there doing 24 because he scored on Darrelle Revis.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
The referee, yeah. And just the whole situation, it was a very weird game. Like you said, this was also post-Deflategate, which also probably fueled the Patriots' hatred even more for for this one. And it was also a really weird Patriots team. Like, if you just look at it, they didn't have Hernandez, obviously. It was just a weird team overall. Their leading rusher was Jonas Gray. He had 412 yards on the season. Half of it was in one game against the Colts. Outside of that, then LeGarrette Blount comes in practically off the street and delivered a pretty good Super Bowl performance. But overall, it was just a really weird team on offense that we didn't really feel like was actually going to put it together in the playoffs and beat a team like Denver. And they ended up doing it, and here we were entering the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and even some more fun stuff going back at it. Initially, this was supposed to be at Arrowhead Stadium. That did not end up working out, so they instead put it to Arizona where it was played, which is interesting because that's the same place that they had the 18-1 season. So a lot of just interesting stuff. And from the Seattle's perspective, this was just such a fun villain in the NFL, something that may be the most hated team in sports history. And I mean that in a good way. I think that they were so entertaining throughout. Obviously, this is the year after they won the Super Bowl. There was the Richard Sherman, I'm the best corner in the game speech. So much hype surrounding them, which and also just looking at these rosters, I mean, there has to be double-digit Hall of Famer or future Hall of Famers playing in this game. There's so many just talented players, so many. Oh my God, right? You there. It's like, it looks like it's a Pro Bowl game with the talent these two rosters have.
Yeah, I mean, I think DVOA rated the 2012, 2013, and 2015 Seahawks all amongst their like top 50 teams of all time. And 2014 Seahawks weren't that far behind, which was obviously this year's team. And this defense was something sensational, and a kind of a team that was kind of built to beat a guy like Brady. It's been long talked about for a lot of years. The way to beat Brady is you have to be able to bring pressure with four and be able to cover with the rest of them. Well, they had Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett, two great pass rushers, and they had probably the best they had the best secondary in football, especially during that 3-4 year stretch. and it was perfectly built to beat New England. It was a perfectly built team that should have given them a lot of problems. The way the Patriots adjusted in this one, and obviously the game plan they run, was just about perfect to how to attack this defense.
Yeah, it really was. And, again, that's one of the fun things that we will get into is sort of the chess match of the Seahawks kind of just say, this is what we're doing. We're going to, we played a cover 3 zone defense. You're going to have to find a way to beat us. And then the Patriots just coming up with new ideas, trying to do it. Just so much fun stuff involved in all of this. And I had something else and I lost it. But yeah, we can just jump into, I think, the game at this point and start talking about.
I had two more things real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
So 2 more pregame things I was thinking about was the pressure on Tom Brady with this one. It's kind of weird to say that now. But at this point, he was only 3-2 in Super Bowl appearances, and he hadn't won since 2004. And his GOAT legacy was nowhere near solidified at this point. And the performances he put on in this playoffs were pretty sensational. He had 593 yards in 2 playoff games, 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. We mentioned the Deflategate scandal, and then the other variable to this was also the Russell Wilson legacy. He had just beaten Peyton Manning the year before, and I think they showed a stat at the beginning that he was 10-0 against playoff teams from the past 2 seasons, just like playing them throughout the years. And this was very much viewed as like a changing in the guard sort of game, as Brady was going to pass this along to Wilson, and Wilson was kind of the next guy up. And the other thing I really thought was, the Broncos were obviously up there, but I felt like these were probably closer to 2 of the best teams in the league at the time. And I feel like, it did happen this past season, but there are a lot of times where it doesn't really happen, where we feel like the 2 best teams are playing in the Super Bowl. And both of these teams were top 10 in scoring and in points against. And it was a great game overall, one of the best of all time.
Yeah, I mean, and you can even go as far as say these were 2 of the best teams we've seen in the past decade. I mean, I'm not sure this is the Patriots team you would select, but to see if you're doing a top 5, I think definitely, the Patriots in some variety are in there, and I think this Seattle team is probably in there. And I remember what I wanted to say as well before we get into the game is sort of the I think the weird journey that happened in the NFC on the way up here, where there was there's like a train of heartbreak where it starts off in the wild card game where this Lions appear to be in position to win a game against Dallas until with a pass interference flag, the flag gets they pick up the flag, do not call it, which ends up being a big reason why the Lions lost that game. Then there was the famous or infamous Dez Bryant, did he catch it, did he not game. Following that, we have the crazy comeback where Russell Wilson, I believe it might even been in the 4th quarter, he had more interceptions than completions, and yet they still find a way to come back and win that wild game. That could be a video in the future. That was an insane one. So a lot of crazy stuff happening just to get Seattle here. And just one of the wildest playoffs in general, but leading to one of the best Super Bowls ever.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. So we will just jump into we'll get into things. And I think that one of the things that I did not remember was this really kind of was at the beginning. The Patriots were dominating everything but the scoreboard early on. Like there was a lot of really good plays by the New England. They were dominating the ball, especially on defense. They were not giving up anything. Blunt started off strong, but they just weren't being able to score. At one point, I believe they had 28-8 plays in their favor, and it did start with a 3rd down, not a 3 and out, but they got a 1st down, then like a 6 and out, if you want to say, early on. But very interesting that they started off so strong.
Yeah, it was they did get on the right foot. The first 2 drives for each team were kind of feeling each other out. And then the Patriots just went on there. They do this, especially set the post-Moss generation of the Patriots. I judge the Patriots offense throughout the years in kind of 3 iterations. There's the opening iteration where it was young Brady, and it was a lot of running game, play action, hitting those guys over the middle, the Troy Browns, the Deion Branches. There was the Moss generation, which was the vertical game, setting up these crossing routes for like the guys like Wes Welker. And then there was this iteration, which was a lot of tight end sets, a lot of tight end uses, and a lot of short passes. You're getting 5-6 yards at a time and just moving the ball intricately down the field. And this was just the second drive was a perfect iteration of that. 13 plays, 58 yards in 7.5 minutes. And everything was going really well. And the 3rd and 6 play was just a horrible call. The one thing they talked about was with that pass rush with Michael Bennett, that the ball wasn't going to be held for a long time. 3 seconds or less and the ball's out every time. 3 seconds and less, 3 seconds less. They tried to force the ball to the end zone, it looked like, and nobody was open downfield. Brady's holding the ball too long. Michael Bennett finally gets to Brady, and the first time the pass rush hits him, it goes right into Lane's hands. And then, he ended up getting hurt in that one, and that was also huge. Because once he went out, Thurald Simon comes in, and Bill Belichick just goes for full-on art of war mode, attack weaknesses, use your strengths, and it just created a huge mismatch once Simon came in.
Yeah, definitely. You said it was a bad call. Do you think it was a bad call by Brady to make the throw, or a bad call in general by the Patriots?
Well, it was a bad throw by Brady, obviously. He threw it right to him. He probably should have just taken the sack and gone with a 3, but I thought it was a bad call in general for the Patriots. They had enough room. I think they were at the 12-yard line, 13-yard line, if I remember. And, the 3rd and 6 call, they had the opportunity to then get a first down and get 1st and goal and set up a 1st and goal play rather than try and force the ball into the end zone, and kind of just stick to the game plan that they've been doing. But instead, they tried to force the ball downfield in the end zone, and there was just nobody open down there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm actually looking at the all-22 footage now. I might even be able to get it up on the... Here, I'll see if I can get it up so that way we can both take a look at it. Let's see if this works. Okay, here we are. So we'll try this. Hopefully it doesn't slow anything down. So this is the play. I'm not sure how here. Well, here. Can you see it now?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, cool. So it's a little blurry. It's probably not going pretty. I have it slow, but here it is. So yeah, you're gonna have... Looks like I believe that's Edelman's going to run deep. You have Amendola run shallow. Edelman looks maybe open for a second. I'm not sure if that's who he's trying to throw it to, or maybe he's trying to throw it on top. It looked like really just a wild throw is what happened here, I think, for Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think he was trying to get it over Lane, and it just didn't end up working the way he wanted to. But yeah, I think 4 of the 5 receiving options are all going to the end zone there when they had just been killing him with the short passes throughout the entire drive. The Shane Vereen plays, the Edelman coming across the field, and then they're running 4 guys into the end zone. I just didn't understand the play call there. That could have been easily a first down at the 4-yard line and then work it from there. Or worst case, you throw it out of bounds and get a field goal out of it.
Yeah, definitely. As a whole, not a great play. Pretty had to have definitely been disappointing. Especially interesting thing about the Patriots heading into this game too is 9 out of their 10 drives in the red zone ended in touchdowns. So they were great in that area leading into this. Definitely a big missed opportunity early on, and obviously we know how it goes, so it didn't really cost them. But more on that in a second. Some very interesting stuff. One thing is that I found Russell Wilson, it was very fun to see him in his prime scrambling ability at this point. He had a few big scrambles. He had one early on. This next drive will eventually also result in not being able to score points in a 3-and-out, or I believe it was either 3-and-out or an early 3rd down. But it was very fun seeing Russell Wilson and seeing how he can move. He doesn't move as much nowadays, but definitely he was in prime mobility mode at that point.
Yeah, it was an interesting game plan for the Patriots because I thought they took a lot of risk. I felt like a lot of what they were doing was spreading their defensive line out. If you look at a lot of their sets early on, you saw defensive linemen 2 yards apart almost. And essentially what they were trying to do is just have guys like Ninkovich and Chandler Jones contain him. But he was just so athletic, it didn't really even matter sometimes. And he just, he made the room that he needed to. The big thing the Patriots were doing is just nobody was open downfield early on until the introduction of another guy later into the game.
Yeah,
they just could not find space. You saw Revis was all over Baldwin, and there was just nobody open downfield. So even when he bought himself time scrambling, there was nowhere to go with the ball. It was impressive coverage, 6-7 seconds without anybody getting open.
Yeah, very good stuff there. One other thing I've noticed, even though the Seahawks weren't able to move the ball very much early on, Marshawn Lynch had so many like good 2-yard runs and 3-yard runs. Again, talk about seeing somebody back in their prime. Prime Marshawn, I still stand by, is the best running back I've ever seen play. I mean, I haven't seen somebody's. I'm a younger guy. I haven't seen, I wasn't around when Barry Sanders was playing, so I don't really know, but. And from what I've seen, no one was better than Marshawn, and he was definitely a tough guy to bring down, even if you got to him before the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, he's definitely up there with the guys like LT who just,
Mm-hmm.
the entire game plan is just focused on making sure you slow them down. And,
Mm-hmm.
Even the simplest run play is 5-6 guys need to be there to tackle him.
Yeah.
One guy
Mm-hmm.
is not going to work ever with Marshawn Lynch. It was incredible. He was such a good running back.
Yeah, there was one play in this game. I forget exactly when it happened, but there was 2 New England players who were hitting him right at the same time, and he still manages to fall forward. And his ability to fall forward was unlike anything I've ever seen. But that did not factor in early. The Patriots would get the ball back and have another impressive drive that would end a lot better this time.
Yeah, I mean, they finally put it together for their first touchdown drive. They have to be feeling really good about themselves, their ability to move the ball in this defense that was, above and beyond the number one defense in the league. They go 9 plays, 65 yards. And the big play to me it was a 3rd and 9 at the 35-yard line. And I mentioned that Thurald Simon came in on the last one, or on this drive, because Lane got hurt on the interception. And then it was a classic Patriots play. They motion one guy out wide, and it reads man coverage. So then Edelman goes right over the middle, and he just burns Simon, who has no chance chasing him across the middle of the field, and he gets 23 yards on a 3rd and 9. And then 2 plays later, that's they get a quick run by Blunt, and then Brady finds LaFell 11 yards, opening touchdown, and that's on Simon again on a quick slant. He has no chance in the one-on-one coverage, and Thomas is too late to get over and help.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, I feel like Edelman as a whole had a tremendous game, and I thought that that first catch and run. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to, if you're listening to the audio only, I'm going to try to put some of these plays in over the video format so you can watch it that way. But yeah, I definitely thought that Edelman as a whole was tremendous throughout this game. Also, fun thing about this drive is that there was a moment earlier on when Gronkowski nearly had a touchdown. You could argue maybe he pushed off a little bit, but they almost had a touchdown. That was on a 1st down and 10. And then, they only gained 1 yard the next play. And that's when the Edelman play happened. And I do find it interesting that, it seemed like they were missing opportunities and still being able to score on this defense, which was a huge way they were able. I mean, just kind of goes to show they really were dominating on every place except for the scoreboard early on. It was still relatively close scoreboard wise, but they had 28-8. They had ran 28 plays. Seattle only ran 8, as I mentioned earlier. And at this point, Seattle's, they're not out of it score wise, but they really could use something big, and that wouldn't happen. They would go 3 and out immediately.
Yeah, once again, it was just product of little to no separation for that Seahawks offense. They just couldn't get anything going. And it was really interesting to see throughout this game how the lack of Seahawks offensive players, like their stars, were unable to bring it early on. I think Baldwin, for the most part, until his touchdown, was just about non-existent. Darrelle Revis had him pretty much locked up. And then Marshawn had some good runs, but overall he was being mostly negated until he eventually scored a touchdown. And then Wilson, of course, he wasn't hitting on a lot of his deep balls because there wasn't anything there for a large part of the game, the opening part of the game at least.
Yeah, definitely. He tried on 3rd down. He tried a deep pass to Curse. It was eventually broken up. So did not work out there. It was Seattle could get nothing going. We're now talking. We're at the 8-minute mark in the 2nd quarter, and I believe Wilson maybe had one. I forget exactly what the pass is, but he had basically no completions. I believe he had 1 or 2 at this point, heading into giving the ball back to New England, who would again go 3 and out, which is exactly what Seattle needed.
Yeah, I believe he actually had 0 completions, if I remember
Okay.
correctly. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think he gives it back to New England midway through the second. He had 0 completions through the game.
Yeah, you might be right about that. Yeah. So definitely just and also, it's very similar to how the Seahawks started the NFC Championship game. In fact, it was kind of just a weird thing that Seattle would do they kind of still do this sometimes, where they just start off slow and just find a way to hang around, and they hang around, and then they're finally able to come to figure something out. And unless you had something else you want to say, let's jump to them finally finding a way to come through with the emergence of somebody nobody knew the name of prior to this game, and that was Chris Matthews, who ends up with a 44-yard completion, getting the Seattle Seahawks in scoring position, and really kind of putting them back in the game.
Yeah, I mean Chris effing Matthews, man.
Yeah.
I was going ballistic, 19-year-old me.
Mhm.
Uh, the guy had, I think, 176 receiving yards for his career, and then he ended up with 109 yards in this game. And he starts with the big play on this drive where he beats, was it Kyle Arrington on that one? And gets them down into
Yes.
scoring range for where Lynch can punch it in. And yeah, it was just finally he was able to connect on one of those deep balls. And it was his first 2 completions were on this drive, a short pass to Kurtz for 6 yards. And then he's finally able to connect on a deep ball. Matthews just goes up and takes it out of Arrington's hands. And this was a really rough half for Kyle Arrington. He was getting burned by Matthews a couple times, and he just had a rough game overall. And Lynch was able to punch it in on the next play, or 3 plays later, excuse me, finally getting the score.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine as a Patriots fan, this must have just been a devastating blow where you dominate you feel like you can't do anything wrong, and all of a sudden it's a tie football game. And I do want to talk about Chris Matthews for a second. As Al Michaels mentioned a couple of times in the broadcast, he was working at a Foot Locker when he got the call from Seattle to do the tryout. And this wasn't the situation where he just happened to get schemed open a couple times and had a couple big plays. I mean, he was winning matchups. He was looking like he was Julio Jones out there with how well he was playing. It was just really fun to see something. It's kind of the fun of the Super Bowl. Unlikely heroes emerging, and obviously he would not be the only one that would emerge in this game. But definitely a very fun storyline throughout the first 3 quarters of this football game.
Yeah, I mean, he just had, that 6'3", 200-pound size. He's just that
Mhm.
prototypical big wide receiver. He ended up finding out in his career he had bricks for hands, and that's why he couldn't make it in the NFL for long term. But he
Mhm.
made plays in this one, and especially the big thing was, the Patriots nickel cornerbacks were Logan Ryan and Kyle Arrington, who weren't the biggest of guys compared to their starting corners who were matched up on different players. And so it created a weird matchup problem where these 2 undersized corners that were playing in the nickel were forced on a guy that they didn't really game plan for, it seemed like. And he ended up making some plays against those the smaller cornerbacks, and that was a huge advantage for them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you would eventually see once they put Brandon Browner on him that he was able to be negated a bit, but for a very long time his height was just too much for New England to handle, and that was a huge reason they were able to tie this game up. So now with about 2 minutes and 16 seconds left, it's classic New England Patriots. Let's see if we can march down the field and score some points.
Yeah, it's just classic Brady. A minute 45 to go right down the field and get the touchdown. Uh, Starts by a couple short passes here and there, gets them all the way down to the 23-yard line, 22-yard line, excuse me. And then, of course, once again, Seahawks just getting burned on main coverage. KJ Wright's way out there on Gronk, and Gronk just goes right by him, which is very weird for the call based on the fact that Cam Chancellor did a really good job covering him on the last possession, and they go man-to-man, and KJ Wright stuck out there on him. And it's just he has no chance in that matchup. Gronk's going to win that 10 times out of 10, especially on the vertical route. 22-yard touchdown. Brady ends up 20 for 27, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick in the first half. Just an awesome performance from him, and a great play by Gronk on that one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was vintage Gronkowski, vintage Tom Brady. Also, on a bit of a side note, I just forgot how big of a human Cam Chancellor was. Like, he's just
Mhm.
absolute monster. But yeah, I mean, again, really fun stuff. That's kind of just what you expect from Brady at this point. Is when it seems like it's going to be a devastating blow, the game is tied. He just calmly puts his helmet back on, marches down the field, gives them a touchdown, takes the lead. The New England Patriots scored 66 points in the final 2 minutes of the season, or final 2 minutes of the game throughout the season, which led the NFL. So definitely something that was not unusual for New England to do. However, what was interesting is that with 31 seconds left, this was far from over, despite the fact that it looked like Seattle was content with running out the clock. They run the ball. They gain 19 yards, though, so they decide, hey, let's see if we can try to score some points here.
Yeah, just a complete letdown from the defense. The Patriots have to be feeling really good about going into the half up a touchdown, and they probably should have even been up more before then. Then Robert Turbin gets 23 yards. Wilson on the fake gets by Jamie Collins, who had a sensational season, just unable to keep the containment on the play, and that moves them into scoring range. And then it was once again. Once again, it was Kyle Arrington getting beat. He gets beat on the face mask from Lockett, and that put them back into scoring range once again after getting beat by Matthews once again. So another rough go at it for Kyle Arrington. Wasn't his best performance whatsoever.
No, yeah, it's tough when you get burned and also grab a face mask while doing it. Definitely a rough one. And eventually, this led to them with 6 seconds left at the 11-yard line having a decision to make here. Do you just kick the field goal, take the 3 points, or do you go for it here? It's not a guarantee that you can run a play that'll only last 5 seconds. In fact, especially if you throw a ball that goes out of the back of the end zone, the clock doesn't stop until the ball hits something. So you could be definitely looking at adding a couple extra seconds on there. It's a risk, but Pete Carroll decided to roll the dice, and it works out in a massive way. They're able to get a touchdown and tie this game. And so again, if the Patriots were feeling frustrated after the first touchdown, had to have been feeling very frustrated after the second touchdown, and it was probably a good thing for them that they got an extra long halftime to really, get back adjusted and get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, it was a really good play by Carroll in that offense. It was pretty much just send the biggest receiver out there, which was Matthews, and he's essentially just going to box out the cornerback because the worst case scenario is that it just goes off him and falls incomplete. And it was just a smart play and a nicely run play by Matthews to get the touchdown. And yeah, Belichick just had to be in his head going ballistic about, if you eliminate mental mistakes, the Patriots are up 17-7 or even 21-7 possibly in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up, it's a tie football game now going into halftime. Just a really frustrating game. I was seething at the time.
Yeah.
And that was a rough end of the first half, of course.
Yes, it was. And I'll be honest, I did not watch the halftime show. So if you were tuning in to hear us talk about the halftime show, I might not be the guy to help you out on that. But one thing I wanted to mention is kind of, we obviously know what's happening. There was the decision that's going to happen at the end where Pete Carroll decides to run a pass play instead of a rushing play. And I find this to be pretty interesting because there was a couple of moments in the first half where there was a 3rd down and 2. They decided to have Marshawn run the ball. They did not get it largely because of a very good play by Vince Wilfork. Later on, they had there was the 3rd down and 2 at the 3-yard line. Marshawn Lynch was able to take it in for a touchdown. So I do kind of wonder if the first time them not being able to do it did factor in, and that actually wouldn't even be it's not even the only time that Marshawn Lynch would get stopped. So a lot of interesting stuff. The next time he would get stopped was actually the first drive of the next half, where first to get set up by another Chris Matthews 45-yard catch. They end up getting a 3rd down and 1, right, I believe it was at the 1-yard line. Yeah, 3rd down and goal at the 1. Marshawn Lynch, they go for it and do not get it. You do have to wonder if now being 2 for 3 in these short range runs, if that factored in. Actually, not the goal line. It was at like the 6, but yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it was at the, I think it's, 6-yard line. Then, of course, Hauschka gets the field goal. But yeah, I mean, there was a whole lot of variables. I do want to break that down, that play a little bit going into
Mhm.
it. But it was interesting to see what happened in the progression of that play call, because I don't think it was necessarily as guaranteed that Lynch was just going to walk into the end zone because he's Marshawn Lynch. When it was
Mhm.
this Patriots defense was really underrated. And, they didn't have like Chandler Jones, obviously, is a premier pass rushing talent, but at the
Mhm.
same time, this defensive line was also huge. Vince Wilfork, Rob Ninkovich, Dante
Mhm.
Hightower at the linebacker position. They
Yeah.
play large guys in the middles and they play really big. It's not necessarily a guarantee that they're just going to waltz into the end zone against the Patriots at the 1-yard line or on 1-yard situation just because Lynch is the guy.
Right. Uh, Totally with you. Then there was kind of a decision to make here where you're inside the 10-yard line. It's 4th down and 1. They decide to go for a field goal here to just take a 3-point lead. Did that decision surprise you at all?
I actually didn't really think too much about it. I thought it was smart. I felt like Seattle at this point had the momentum, and I felt like maybe you haven't really been able to slow down Brady up until this point. But at the same time, I felt like getting the 3 points and getting your first lead of the game was a big deal as well.
Yeah, yeah, I see both sides. You could have gone for it, but I'm not going to hate on them for not going for it. They were aggressive in the first half by running a play with 6 seconds. Going to be a little bit more conservative here. Make sure that they take the lead. And so then we would have another drive from New England. This is now with 11 minutes left, and this would not go too well for Tom Brady, and this would really get the momentum on Seattle's side.
Yeah, the Patriots really struggled through this third quarter and the beginning of the fourth, and it starts with this interception by Bobby Wagner, and it just started to. I talked a little bit about what the Seahawks did really well and how that was kind of an advantage, kind of how you try and beat the Patriots, which is rush with four. If you bring pressure with four and cover really well, it's going to affect Brady, because if he gets hit when there's nobody open, there's nothing he can do about it because he can't scramble like Wilson. So then
Mhm.
Michael Bennett, from this third quarter from Michael Bennett, was something sensational. And the Seahawks won. I thought he possibly could have been considered for the MVP of the Super Bowl, just because how good he was in this quarter. He's just bringing pressure on every play. And they only had 1 sack in this game, but overall he's just devastating Brady on play after play. They bring pressure again up the middle. He forces the throw, tries to jam it into Gronk, and Bobby Wagner comes up with the play.
Yeah, and this was also just Bobby Wagner being Bobby Wagner, of just instantly pouncing on, looks like he's not going to be able to make that play and just finding a way to get over there and be able to do it's one of those classic Bobby Wagner interceptions. And I mean, if it, again, like I said, if it was feeling rough after going down 3, this was a tough one. This was one that, I mean, you're now at a situation where you're almost wondering if you even have a chance in this game. You're almost wondering, you have the ball at the 50-yard line now, only because of a penalty on Richard Sherman. It would have been early. It would have been in field goal range already. And all they have to do is get a first down. They can get in field goal range, at least go up 6, potentially gain more. Definitely a dagger for New England at this point.
Yeah, definitely frustrating. Once again, like New England was dominating so much of the game, and it looked like they were just in total control. And then the next thing you know, we're down 3 and potentially going down more after the interception. Another big play on this one, though, was 2 interceptions and 2 injuries for the Seahawks. Cliff Averill went down on this play, the pass rushing partner for Michael Bennett, and he's out for the game with a concussion after this play. And that was another big one. Obviously, losing that pass rushing talent for the Seahawks was a major key also.
Yeah, and also that was one of the nastiest concussions I've ever seen. I mean, that was brutal. The what happened. I mean, that was a rough one.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then Seattle, they're starting to get getting things going. They're going to march down the field. Don't have to go halfway down to get. They end up scoring a touchdown. This is one. First off, there's an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty back when the NFL stood for the no fun league. This is kind of silly that you get penalized for this, but that was the rule back then. Also, this is where you're going to get the Richard Sherman pointing out 24 to the cameras when Darrelle Revis looked like it was just a miscommunication, but it was, or actually, now I'm watching it right now. The referee kind of got in the way. So
Yeah.
little break there from for Seattle, and that resulted in resulted in a touchdown to now put him up by double digits.
Yeah, it was. I think Collinsworth was on the call, and he actually called this pretty well. It was a savvy move from Baldwin to just essentially rub around the referee perfectly, and they had a crossing route in front of the referee as well. So Revis couldn't go under the ref because there was a crossing route there that would have picked him. So he tries to go over, and the referee's trying to back up and backs up right into him essentially. And it was just a nice play from Baldwin. He ends up making the play, and I think it was his first catch of the game, honestly, was this touchdown.
Yeah, no. Well, that's good stuff then. I must have missed that when watching it. But yeah, I mean, in fact, that was his only catch of the game. So yeah, he picked the right moment to have it, gives them the touchdown. And it seemed like at this point, okay, the Patriots have to do something. They have to, there's still time left, but you don't have time forever. There's 4.5 minutes left in the third quarter. You're not being able to stop Seattle like you were earlier on in this game. You need to start putting something together, and instead they immediately go 3 and out.
Yeah, from this point on, the Patriots really struggle for this quarter. I think up until 12:10 mark of the fourth quarter, they have 6 plays and get 9 yards in 2 3-and-out drives. And like I said, the pass rush is getting to Brady and disrupting him. The Seahawks essentially are scrapping the man-to-man coverage for a lot of this and just going into their base cover 3 zone, which is really what they should have done probably the entire game. And they're just tackling everything in front of them. So they're more than happy to let Patriots get some of these short passes going, but then they're just tackling them right away. And it worked out very well for these 3 possessions in a row.
Yeah. I mean, it was really nothing going for New England. They have to give the ball back to Seattle, who has an opportunity here on a 3rd down and 3. If they're at midfield, they're gonna go deep here. They're gonna go for Jermaine Kearse, who drops a pass at about the 25-yard line. Could have gotten the ball in the red zone to get them up even more points. And that was definitely, in hindsight, definitely a break for New England.
Yeah, it was. So the Patriots actually ended up switching up some things. Malcolm Butler starts coming into the game a lot more here, and you see less and less Kyle Arrington from this point. And the other thing that they start doing is Brandon Browner is essentially almost exclusively playing on Chris Matthews from here on out. And the size of Browner just completely takes Matthews out of the game. I think he has one more catch after in the second half, one of his 4 catches, which is just a 8-yard gain. And so, Butler made a few plays in this one, and I think he was the one who actually was covering Kearse, and he ends up grabbing his arm as Kearse goes up to make the catch, and he was unable to bring it in. So it was a good play from Butler, and it was also a really good throw from Wilson, trying to drop that one in, and it just fell incomplete after Kearse couldn't hold on.
Yeah, I mean, it was good coverage from Butler. It looked like Kearse still had a shot at it, though, and just was not able to. He did get both hands on it, but was not able to hold it in. So some credit and some blame for sure on that one. But definitely makes you think if he was able to hold on to that one, that could have actually been a dagger. That could have actually potentially won it for them. Did not work out. So now New England, it's about to be the fourth quarter now. This drive will get into the fourth quarter. You're thinking, okay, well, now here we go. Now they have to score here. This is where it's surely going to happen. And I'm watching this. I'm thinking, like, is this when they score? No, it is not. Again, we're going to have yet another 3-and-out here where New England, they run the ball with LeGarrette Blount, who is having himself quite the game, actually, but is not able to get anything, loses the yard on 3rd down and 1, which results in yet another punt back to Seattle.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good rush up the middle, and Cam Chancellor made the play. Obviously, I guess, you maybe think that maybe Patriots try and throw there. They went Vereen up the middle the first play out of the shotgun, then went to James Devlin on a flat route for 6 yards. Why not just put Vereen back in there in the shotgun and do what he's been doing? But, they end up having to punt, and Seattle gets the ball back with really what was a chance to ice this game, and they just couldn't get anything going.
Yeah, so they get the ball back, and this is one, I mean, this couldn't get anybody open. I think that, Revis, for the most part, he completely shut down Doug Baldwin. The only catch he gave up was, as we all know, with the help of a zebra. And then we had, on this third down, for example, it's 3rd down and 7. Nothing is open whatsoever, which ends up resulting in a sack. Wilson just had nowhere to get the ball to.
Yeah, the Patriots essentially deployed what they normally do against like an all-pro running back, which is they're not really trying to get too far upfield with their defensive line. They're essentially starting by just filling the gaps and getting up a yard and looking for the tackle, which is smart because obviously Lynch is what Lynch is. And Wilson is such a good scrambler, it's hard to get a lot of pressure on him without giving him room to run. But then, of course, the coverage is so good 6, 7, 8 seconds later that we're end up just able to finally bring him down in the back and make the play.
Yeah, good stuff there from you. And again, this is just, you talk about, if we're talking about the story here, this is blown opportunity after blown opportunity here for Seattle. And I think it's their offense. I think a lot of people sort of, when they talk about the comeback that happens, I think a lot of people sort of bring it up from Tom Brady was able to come through and he was able to, score multiple touchdowns on this great Seattle defense. And we are about to get into that. But this is only set up because New England's defense was able to really come through a couple of times and get a couple good stops here.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying anything. I was good.
Oh, yeah. I just think, you mentioned the chess match of this one. That was really big. And the chess match was just perfectly run in this one by both teams. It was both teams coming out with a game plan, then countering the game plans. And the big thing for the Seahawks was finally when the Chris Matthews came in, they were able to connect on a few deep balls because their passing game was essentially only vertical. They weren't doing a lot of short routes. They weren't trying for a lot of short routes. I didn't even think Russell Wilson was actually very good in this one, but he threw some beautiful deep balls, and he gave his receivers chances to make plays. And a lot of that happened once Chris Matthews began to take advantage of the short cornerbacks, like I said. So once Browner came into the game, it was a great counter from the Patriots defense. And this was right after the Seahawks identified, okay, we're trying to confuse them with these man-to-man looks, and it's not working. They're just burning us every time we run to man-to-man. So let's just run our base zone and see if they can beat us with it. And for a large part, the Seahawks were doing really good up until these last 2 drives.
Yeah, and I mean, Russell Wilson, his stat line ended up being 12 for 21 with 247 yards, which is just a bizarre stat line. He averaging over 20 yards per completion, which is wild. So Wilson not able to come through, not really his fault on that 3rd down. Then we would go from one sack to another sack as to start off this drive with 12 minutes left in the game. Brady would get sacked instantly, which now puts them in a rough spot.
Yeah, the only sack of the game, the pass protection had been pretty good throughout the game, and Bruce Irvin almost just practically runs free at him and just takes him down immediately, and that sets up a 2nd and 18 for New England. So,
he kind of took him down like the wrestler, the edge would spear people. It was just a very clean sack on that one. They would get 4 yards on the next play, creating a 3rd down and 14. And this, you definitely look back at it and say this was a key play right here, as they're able to come. Julian Edelman is really the guy who's able to make this play. He comes through, gets open, and is able to pick up the 21-yard pickup in the 1st down.
Yeah, this play was really interesting because there was a bunch of articles that came out after this game about this play. He just runs over the middle. It's a classic Edelman play. Brady hits him, and then it's absolutely leveled. Cam Chancellor goes in head first, and there was no helmet there was no targeting rule at this time, and he just completely takes him out. And a lot of the reports say that they were trying to get Edelman out of the game for a concussion test, and he ends up staying in the game, but despite he can barely get up after the play. And it was just a huge play from Edelman, and it's exactly why Patriots fans love him. He goes up and makes the gritty play. He does exactly what needs to be done to get that 1st down on 3rd and 14 and continue this drive and allow us to get into the end zone.
Yeah, and it was important for him to stay in the game, as with a 3rd down and 8 later on in this drive, he would come through again, getting a 21-yard pickup, which put the ball at the 4-yard line, which eventually set up a Danny Amendola touchdown. New England is now back in it with just under 8 minutes to go. It is now just a 1-score game.
Yeah, so Edelman gets the 21 yards all the way down to the 4-yard line. Then at 8 minutes and 4 seconds, if anyone is actually watching this with the video up, 8 minutes and 4 seconds, they have 1st and goal. Save that play right there, because Edelman runs a slant and out route and just completely puts Thorold Simon on roller skates and sends him to the ground. And Brady misses him by an inch. He misses him by inches, but 2nd and goal, Edelman pretty much just runs up the seam and stops in the back of the end zone. Earl Thomas is just a half second late on the play. Perfect throw from Brady, of course, touchdown, and we're down 3 now, looking to go up again.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put both of those plays in the video. So again, this is really the one to watch the video file of if you're listening to it online.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, so big job there, but it's far from over. You're still down at this point, and not just that, but you're in a situation where Seattle's getting the ball back. So if they can come through here, they can potentially, in theory, if they get a touchdown, they can pretty much ice the game once again. But again, it would just not work out. What would actually happen on 3rd down is that Marshawn Lynch is going to run a very good route here, but Wilson's just going to miss him, which allows another 3 and out and gets the Patriots the ball back once again.
Yeah, I think this was actually something that was really underrated in Lynch's game, his ability to run routes and catch the ball, as we're going to see on the next possession for the Seahawks also. And he runs a great wheel route that he actually has the guy beat. And I don't know if, it seemed like he almost turned the wrong way for the ball, like he was expecting to throw somewhere else. But then it ends up falling incomplete. And it was really interesting to just see. I don't think, obviously they had Lynch, who can, is your bell cow kind of running back. But overall, the Seahawks offense wasn't really built to chew clock. It's meant for big plays and to get big plays whenever they could. And, 1st and 10, and they're taking a shot downfield once again. And it just wasn't it wasn't the kind of team that was meant to chew 5-6 minutes off of a drive. And they just couldn't do it on this one, and Patriots get the ball back once again.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Do you think, we'll ask a strategy question here. Do you think it was the correct strategy? Because I do think it was the correct strategy to say, let's not even worry about the clock. Let's try to score a touchdown and be up 2 scores again.
Yeah, I think it is. I just, it's always play to win, not play to lose, or play not to lose. You know what I mean? And so obviously
you don't want to play to lose either. So I guess either way works, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't ever want to preach playing it safe, but at the same time, the way I was just thinking about it, if the roles were reversed, this is just prime Patriots range, up 24-21 with about, I'm trying to think, what was the time clock when they got the ball back?
There was 8 minutes, 7:55, so there was enough time left where you're probably not.
Yeah.
If you don't get a touch, go ahead.
This is also a Patriots range where this is where Brady would just turn off a 6-minute drive and get some points and just completely decimate a game. And this is just not the kind of team that was built to do that. They took their shots downfield, and it just didn't seem like they had a play in their playbook that was meant to get a guy a good 5-6 yards, good 5-6 yard catch.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, obviously, it won him a Super Bowl last year, came close to winning him a Super Bowl this year. It has its pros, it has its cons. Definitely did not come up too well here. So now New England would get the ball back with 6 minutes and 52 seconds left for basically just a classic Tom Brady drive.
Yeah, I mean, this was just beautiful. Of course, the 3 and out happens. Then it's just Brady says, okay, 64 yards, I'm going to work. The first play is a Vereen one-handed catch. Vereen again. And then he gets the 1st down. Edelman makes a few people miss. And I felt like the Seahawks at this point are getting just kind of ultra conservative. It seemed like they didn't want, they were having a lot of success with giving up the short routes and then tackling in front. But I think their exhaustion combined with the moment, they also were just missing some tackles, and these guys were getting open in the seams of the zone. and that started to hurt him as this drive continued.
Yeah, well, and then they started playing some man coverage, which did not work either, as that allowed for Rob Gronkowski to just again do Rob Gronkowski like things, even against Cam Chancellor. He ends up getting a 20-yard completion, which now gets them the ball at the 32-yard line, gets them in field goal range, which is a good situation. You know, you want to at least be able to score 3 here. You have to score 3 here. But now with 4 minutes left, you can start to think about taking the lead and trying to win this one in regulation.
Yeah, Gronk finally beat Cam on that corner route, got the first down on 2nd and long when after a tough Amendola offensive pass interference call moved him back. It looked like that maybe the Seahawks have kind of saved it. With this one, Gronk beats Cam Chancellor, and then he runs a quick button hook route once again on KJ Wright, who has no chance out wide against Rob Gronkowski. And that just moves the Patriots down into the red zone. Quick LaFell out on a set Brady the most records for a completion or set Brady with the record for the most completions in a Super Bowl, which of course he broke 2 years later. But that set them up with 1st and goal inside at the 5-yard line.
Yes, and from there we would see a LeGarrette Blount 2-yard run, and followed by the play that would eventually be the game winner here for Julian Edelman at the 3-yard line.
Yeah, so I mentioned that play with 8 minutes to go. He runs the slant, fakes it, Terrell Simon bites, he slides out of his feet, and Brady missed him just barely. They run the play once again, perfectly run by Edelman. This is his route. He runs the slant, catches him, goes outside, nice and easy throw and catch for the Super Bowl right there. And it was just a perfect play, and it's perfect Patriots football right there, and what they try to do week in and week out. You know, the tough thing is, it's like, what does the Seahawks do any differently? Do you double Edelman at the red zone? That doesn't make a lot of sense because Gronkowski's there. You know, there's no way for Thomas to cover his zone and get all the way over to cover Edelman on that one. And so there's just no answer for it. And the Patriots knew that, and they ran it to perfection.
Yeah, definitely. And so from that, they take the lead, and, you know, no way anyone's going to come back from it. So that's pretty much the end of the game, and we don't have to talk about anything else.
Yeah, nothing happened after this.
Right. Yeah. And this is kind of what I love about this game so much, is that all of that was amazing, but then like nobody remembers it because of what happens on this final drive and the absolute absurdity that's going to happen in these final couple of minutes. Going to all start off with Marshawn Lynch running a sluggo to pick up 31 yards. They're playing man coverage, and Lynch just shows why he's one of the better route running halfbacks in the league.
Yeah, Collins actually had a really good game in this one, but he got beat by Wilson late in the first half for that run that set up the touchdown to tie it at 14, and he gets burned by Lynch on this one. It was a really good route by Lynch, faking the slant and then just beating him down the sideline. And, you know, once again, this was an underrated part of Marshawn's game, that how good he actually was at catching the ball. He wasn't elite by any measures, but he was really good, and he was just wide open on this one after a great route.
Yeah, and you know, that kind of sets things up where it's like, okay, well, here we go. This is really going to come down to it. You're down 4 points, 1 minute and 41 seconds left at the 49-yard line. So things are looking up for Seattle, but now they're facing a 3rd down and 10 and need to get something going. And that's when it's going to be Ricardo Laquette who is going to have to come through. And he comes through with a slant route, is able to get open and pick up 11 on 3rd down and 10. Again, very crucial, kind of not forcing them into a 4th down situation.
Yeah, and this was finally the Seahawks went for a route underneath. It was, you know, it seemed like this entire drive they were just taking shots and just hoping someone comes down and wins a battle. And that's how they were going to try and get a touchdown. And even with all the time they had on the clock, they're still just taking shot after shot. But then finally, Wilson goes underneath, finds Lockett here, sets him up at the 38-yard line for 1st down.
Yeah, and you know, one interesting thing about the Patriots too and this drive, they're being very simple here. They're saying we're going to have, you know, single safety deep. We're playing man coverage. Well, we're going to force one of you to beat us. We're going to force you to make a play. And so what Russell Wilson is going to decide to do is, hey, Jermaine Kearse against some unknown guy named Malcolm Butler. Let's take advantage of that opportunity and let's throw one up there and see if he can make a play. And which Curse gets open for a second. Butler does a great job coming back and knocking the ball away, and somehow the ball just happens to land right back into Curse's lap.
Yeah, I mean, this was just a fantastic play by Curse. Butler is in the right position, does everything right. You mentioned this matchup earlier with the Curse drop. That was really a perfect pass from Wilson. This wasn't as good of a throw. And of course, now I'm just seething at this point. They're comparing it to David Tyree and Mario Manningham. And it's just like, it doesn't seem like anything's going to go the Patriots' way at this point.
Yeah, and again, and it seems silly now, I think, to say like, oh, nothing's going New England's way, but it's important to remember this has been about 10 years since they won a Super Bowl, and the last two times they were in a Super Bowl was the Mario Manningham and the David Tyree games. David Tyree, they literally showed the graphic on the screen when this happened. Little underrated thing about this play was Malcolm Butler realizing that Curse had caught it and quickly getting over to knock him out of bounds.
Yeah, he ended up making a really nice play. Of course, Deron Harmon jumps over him, and I think Collinsworth said he should have just kicked the ball out of bounds.
Yeah.
Of course, nobody's really thinking about that.
Right.
But the big thing too was I think the Seahawks also screwed themselves on this play because they're not paying attention because they're so excited about the catch. The play clock runs out and they have to burn their second timeout. So now they're stuck with one timeout left in the game with 1 minute and 6 seconds left, because they weren't paying attention because they had used a timeout earlier in the drive before the Lockett first down play.
Yeah, but I mean, that probably won't factor in. You're at the 6-yard line. You have beast mode. You'll easily be able to score from here.
Yeah, should be no problem.
Right. So they do give it to Marshawn on first down. He takes it to the 1-yard line. And I think this is really the play we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about.
So yeah, they give it to Marshawn, and he gets 5 yards. And it was really interesting to see the mind games. Everyone's expecting Belichick to call a timeout here, and he doesn't. And the clock keeps running. And I think that forced the Seahawks into a situation of, okay, what do we do? I think they thought they would have a timeout. If he didn't score, they would at least have a timeout to talk about a play. But instead, the clock's winding down to 30 seconds, and they need to get a play off. So the interesting thing became that Belichick not calling the timeout forced the Seahawks into a play that they might not have want to run, because it just turned into a weird situation. Because what happens if they run the ball with Marshawn on second down and he doesn't get in? Then you're forced to burn your last timeout, and you have 3rd and goal at the 1-yard line with 30 seconds left. There's no guarantee that you could easily get off 2 plays. You're kind of forced into a passing situation. So it becomes much more predictable that they pass on 3rd down. So this essentially forces the Seahawks to try and almost zag what was expected and go with a pass here.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, this has kind of just been a bread and butter play in the Seattle offense for a while. So this is kind of just, I think, something they could easily go back to. They wouldn't have to worry about somebody running a wrong route on a play like this. So I do think that factors in. This is one of the most controversial calls in football history, I think, of Pete Carroll here. I think there's some people that say it's the right call. There's some people that call it the worst call in NFL history. I don't agree with either of those things. I do think that the move is, I remember watching this. You talked about your experience watching this a little bit. I was watching this with Seattle Seahawks fans. So this was quite the wild journey of emotions in that household. And I remember just saying at the moment, don't do anything stupid here. Run the ball 2 times. That was just my mindset, or 3 times. That was just what I thought would make sense at that time. I do understand the logic. I think I probably would have given it to Marshawn Lynch. But at the same time, there definitely is logic to both sides. And I think really what it comes down to is that Malcolm Butler made an incredible play.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Belichick is game planning for this one play over and over again. Butler's able to jump the route like they talked about and make the play. But, I mean, I don't know. So I, at the time, thought, well, why wouldn't you give it to Lynch? Just about 100% of the people in the country did at that time.
Right.
Oh, why isn't Lynch getting the ball here? That makes no sense. But like I said, so the problem is they screwed themselves, I thought, by burning the 2 timeouts early in the drive. So like I said, it leaves you with 1 timeout. So if you run the ball with Lynch and he doesn't get in, you're stuck with 3rd and goal, no timeouts, and you're almost forced to pass the ball. Because if he runs again and doesn't get in, then you're racing against the clock to try and score. And so at that point, you're kind of predictable that you're going to throw the ball on third down if he doesn't get in. Where I do disagree with the thing is the pass is the play call. I think goal line situations are such a cluster that I'm not really a huge fan of just throwing it into the middle of that cluster.
Right.
I think I would have went, if it were me, I would have went roll out with Wilson and either let him use his legs, even though it takes out half the field. He's such a good athlete, it doesn't matter. And then the other thing is, too, is it's a safer throw because he's probably throwing to a sideline to a guy like a Baldwin or a tight end, where he's throwing to a sideline at the back of the end zone, or if he doesn't like the throw, he could just throw it away. Or he throws it to a sideline and it's just going to fall incomplete. But instead, because of the situation, he's forced to throw it over the middle of the field, and there's one throw to make on one read, and Butler jumps the play and makes it.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I'm watching this play a little bit. Looked like Marshawn actually could have even been open in the flat a little bit. Maybe that could have been an option. That's kind of how I feel. I mean, obviously it was a pick play. You were never going to throw it there, but I kind of do feel like there was. It's not like there's just A or B. There were several different options. I'm with you. I think that if you are going to pass, I actually don't hate the idea of passing it at all. I don't think you run a pick play there, but at the same time, if it works, nobody's complaining about it. Nobody's saying what a dumb call that worked out. I don't think. I do know that a lot of Seahawks players, especially, were not very happy with this play call. I know Marshawn Lynch in his interview with Pat McAfee talked about how I believe the exact quote is that as a man, you're taught to, when you make a mistake, own up to your mistakes. And a lot of guys in the locker room did not feel that Pete owned up to his mistake. I think they think that was just. They think that he should have just said it was a terrible call. He did not. He kind of said, he went with it would have been a great call had it worked out. I do understand both sides, but I mean, I think that, I think that it was just such an interesting play. I think one thing I want to talk about as well is that, as the legend has it, that Malcolm Butler in practice, when practicing this play, kept getting beat. He was really struggling with this play, not doing a good job of being able to convert and be able to get it. So that's another interesting factor that goes into this. Just so many crazy things about it. And, we all kind of know Malcolm Butler now because he's turned into a decent player. But at the time, he was a complete nobody, too. That's another crazy thing about it.
Yeah, I just think, this is the craziness of Belichick that he's planning for this play with Marshawn Lynch at the 1 yard line. Yeah. And that he's prepared for this play to happen. And Butler's mentally prepared for this play to happen. And he makes a great play. It actually is open for the split second, and Butler just makes a great beat on the ball. It shows, the practice shows, because he knows he's coming. He rubs right around Browner, who's being picked, and essentially just steps in and takes the ball. It was a great play.
And they even collide with each other, going for the ball. They meet at the same spot, and he hangs on to the ball. That's not easy to do either. I mean, that probably felt like running into a brick wall, and he's even able to hold on to it, which is another thing. I mean, just under the circumstances, here's a question I wanted to ask you. Could you make the argument this is the biggest play in NFL history?
Oh, without a doubt. It's the biggest interception of all time. Definitely the biggest defensive play ever. And I guess what's its competition, the Franco Harris play that I'm drawing a blank on the nickname for it. But
Immaculate Reception.
Yeah, thank you. Immaculate Reception. Those are probably the two biggest plays in NFL history, no doubt. It's just probably what generation you grew up in is which one you pick.
Yeah. Well, I think this one is, especially because, it's the Super Bowl. It literally changed the, if he doesn't make this play, it's a touchdown and they lose. He does make the play, so they win. So it literally completely changes the outcome of the Super Bowl. And I just think, situationally, if the Seahawks get this, they go back to back for the first time since New England did it. I think that puts them in a much higher regard than they are currently in. And I also think for the Patriots, I mean, this was Brady's 4th Super Bowl win, which kind of, at this time, they had been a dynasty, but just that. It was a dynasty. It wasn't the greatest dynasty of all time. And I think this one, and it was really the next one that really solidified Brady's legacy, but this one really put him in it was, you couldn't not have him in the GOAT argument at this point.
Yeah, he ends up 4-2 instead of 3-3 in Super Bowls, which is a big thing. And they roll off 3 Super Bowls in the next 6 years after this one. And yeah, I don't think it was as clear cut that he was the GOAT at this point. And it was a great game from him. I think he ended up, I had the numbers here, 13 of 15, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. He just delivered once again, as Brady always does, it seems like at this point, which wasn't a sure thing at that time, but it was just a sensational performance from him.
Yeah, I mean, throughout the game, he was kind of up and down, but definitely in the fourth quarter and those last two drives, he was phenomenal. Final stat line was 37 for 50, threw the ball 50 times, had 328 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. Up and down game for sure, but got it done when he had to. A little bit to be mentioned is that this game was not over after the Malcolm Butler interception. There was a little bit of fun stuff that happened at the end. So, there was a celebration penalty. So the interception was at the 2. It brings it back to the 1 yard line. And so now you're thinking like, okay, well, you do have to get it past the goal line. There is a safety option. Again, safety's still probably going to end up in a Patriots win, but there's still a little hope there. And then Michael Bennett immediately just jumps off sides, and that pretty much ends it. There was a fight afterwards, which was a lot of fun. And then that was the end of the game.
Yeah, it was very weird. I don't think I've ever seen a knee before that, a kneel down situation at the goal line like that, where it was literally on the goal line because of the unsportsmanlike penalty celebrating the interception. But yeah, I mean, it was just a great game overall and a very fun ending, of course. I did have a couple questions for you on your thoughts.
Okay.
Is there any chance, given that fourth quarter stat line that I gave you, that you could categorize this as a better Brady performance in 2016?
So this one, as opposed to, are we talking overall performance or are we talking the fourth quarter?
The comeback, particularly, yeah.
Maybe statistics wise, I don't think I would, just simply because I do think a lot of this was like, I think Edelman getting it was phenomenal. I think this, maybe you could argue, that was Edelman's best game, even including the game that he won Super Bowl MVP in. I think he was phenomenal in this. I think he had to make more higher degree of difficulty throws in Super Bowl 51 than Super Bowl 49. So I would still say Super Bowl 51, but he was great in this one as well.
Yeah, I think the argument for Brady is obviously that, the fourth quarter, he had to be borderline perfect those last 12 minutes, and he essentially was. He was just, like I said, 13 to 15 in the fourth quarter, and he just made play after play when he needed him to make it. And I think the other argument you make for Brady in this one, for this being the better performance, is that the Seahawks defense was the best for probably 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row. And he picked it apart almost in the fourth quarter. They had no chance in a lot of these plays. And for all the credit for how good Sherman was, for how good Chancellor and Thomas was, he made play after play against them. It was incredible to watch him do that and just have his way with them in that fourth quarter. But
yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to go back on it. I think I'm going to change my mind. I think that this is the better one, because I think that the Super Bowl 51, now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of it was also the Patriots defense coming through and making key plays. I think this one was a lot of in that fourth quarter. I mean, they did get some help with a couple 3-and-outs, but I do think that, I think I've changed my opinion. I think you're right. And the fact that he had to come up with multiple third downs in that first touchdown, he was able to do so. And like, yeah, as you said, I mean, he didn't really have a bad play. There was no dropped interception or anything. I mean, you could argue in Super Bowl 51, there was the Robert Alford near interception that resulted in a Julian Edelman catch. That was, So yeah, I think I'll say that. I think I'll say this was probably his finest quarter of football.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that, and of course, there was a lot of talk going into this game, not just on the quarterbacks, but on the cornerbacks, about who was the best in the league between Sherman and Revis. And if I did the numbers right, which I think I did, it was Sherman 1 catch for 6 yards, Revis 1 catch for 3 yards and a touchdown against them. So it was a great performance from those two as well, which was really fun to watch. My second question for you of 3 was, do the Seahawks stay together if Wilson completes the pass in the end zone? Longer.
I think for longer, yeah. I think that I definitely think that it's more graceful. Earl Thomas doesn't flip off Pete Carroll as he's getting carted out the field, I don't think. if they had 2 Super Bowl rings as opposed to 1. I think that there was a lot of resentment towards Pete Carroll because of this. This is total speculation. I mean, I don't have any inside information or anything, but I think that, again, going back to that Marshawn quote that's a great interview, by the way. If you guys haven't checked that one out, the Marshawn Lynch with Pat McAfee, it's like a 30-minute interview, a lot of fun stuff there. But I just think that there was a lot of resentment towards Pete Carroll. You even heard, I know Richard Sherman was talking about how, like, we've all heard all of Pete Carroll's stories. I just think that the resentment isn't there if a bunch of people in the country don't blame your head coach for costing you a Super Bowl. I think I just think that that's a huge reason why there was a lot of resentment.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the Sherman and the Thomas situations didn't end well in Seattle, but I feel like they could have been career Seahawks if they end up, if they win this Super Bowl. Obviously the Cam Chancellor injuries were a different story, but if he was healthy, I don't know if he would have stuck around for the entire time either. Right. And then my last question, of course, is for a hypothetical. What is Russell Wilson's career right now if he wins this Super Bowl?
Honestly, my gut says probably about the same. I think he probably still has 2 Super Bowl rings. I think that he's now playing for a team that he's doing a lot of the lion's share of the work. I think that I think that he's definitely looked up as a lot higher because, again, if we're going to rewind a little bit, the Russell Wilson of this era was not the Russell Wilson of today. He was kind of along for the ride in some ways, where he was just coming through on certain plays, but he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. It was Marshawn Lynch's offense, and he was just sort of the guy that handed it off to him in a lot of ways. So I think that it probably doesn't do much, because I still think the defense and Marshawn get most of the credit for this era of the Seattle Seahawks team, and I think that he's still, having MVP style seasons and not getting MVP votes here in 2020 regardless.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I think, I personally, and I think a lot of people do actually agree with me, that think he's the second best quarterback in football right now behind Mahomes. And if he wins this Super Bowl, he's probably still there. That would mean he's 2-0 on Super Bowls, and he beat Manning and Brady, which is just an incredible feat nonetheless, but obviously he couldn't get it done. But it would have been interesting to see if he's like the undisputed next man up for quarterback wise going forward if he wins this game.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just think that it would have been different had he beaten Tom Brady last year as opposed to back in on February 1st of 2015. So I think I think that would have definitely. Yeah, I think his career is probably about the same. Yeah. So okay. So any final thoughts on what I say is the best Super Bowl of all time? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was impressed with how well coached these two teams were. Or I guess I shouldn't say I was impressed. Obviously, these are two of the all-time great coaches of this era. But, just how disciplined they were. There weren't a lot of penalties. I think there was one in the first half. And just, watching that, like I said, I think there's 3 iterations of the Patriots system throughout these years on offense. And it was, the beginning was the power run, then the vertical game from Moss, adds a whole nother dimension. Then, of course, there's this where it's a lot of 2 tight end sets and a lot of short passes, quick passing game. And this was almost just the peak of that quick passing game performance for me. And it was incredible to watch Brady as he hit this stride, and knowing what I know now, how he got to this point of his career.
Yeah, definitely. Fun. Also, one more thing I wanted to mention. Fun thing about Russell Wilson is that there was Al Michaels said something that's very funny in hindsight. I think he talked about how Russell Wilson, when he won his first Super Bowl, said, I couldn't help but think about the next one. I want to end my career with 6, like Michael Jordan did. So very ironic that is now how much Brady won with the Patriots, and we'll see if he wins anymore. But definitely, reminds me of that Rams player who said a dynasty starts tonight when the first Patriots won their first Super Bowl. There's just some fun stuff there.
Yeah, it was great to see, no doubt. And, seeing these guys 5 years ago, these quarterbacks especially, was just interesting to watch how they've progressed. So I enjoyed doing this. This was fun. I guess we'll have to do Bucks Raiders next, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think everyone's been clamoring to a deep breakdown of that one. No, but yeah, we'll see. Let us know in the comments below if there's any more you guys want to hear us talk about. If you've made it this far, then congratulations to you making it an hour and 14 minutes into us talking about a game that ended 5 years ago. But it was a lot of fun. I do enjoy these kind of things from time to time, and it was a good way to get a podcast done in the off season.
Yeah, no doubt. I enjoyed doing it. Any slow times, I'm definitely down to rewatch some old games and do this again. So
Yeah, definitely. It was fun. I actually was really enjoying watching this game. I'm like, I know what happens. Why am I so into this game? But it was really fun to rewatch it.
there's a lot of little things you forget,
Mm-hmm.
some of the intricacies to the game plan and how they changed things up and what these two teams were doing at the time. It was fun to go back and, relive some of that history.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, let us know in the comments below if there's any other games you'll want to watch. I feel like the commenters are going to say every Derek Carr game that he's played in. But we'll see. And until next time, thanks for watching.
All right.